Stephen Mansfield, New York Times bestselling author and speaker.
Doug Tenaple, I'm the creator of Earthworm Jim.
Tweet Groups.
I'm Victor Dweck.
Joseph Carter, I'm the Mink Man.
This is Dave Baker from Forged in Fire.
This is Leanne Morgan. I'm a comedian, and this is why you should never
Don't ever.
Not ever.
Don't waste your time.
Oh, you really should.
listen to those darling, yummy Reverend and the Reprobate.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Reverend and the Reprobate podcast. I am Lucas Pinkert. I'll be the Reverend this evening. Along with me is Danley Gibbons.
You do that. You start it and you
Mr.
get
Gibbons.
you get me saying something and you start it with that.
Well, you'd think you'd pick up on it by now.
Nah, I don't care.
No, probably not.
I'm happy. I'm just happy to be here.
So tonight on the show, we have the father of the Tatooine Sons, as well as the host of the Bible Nerd Show, the wonderful, fabulous, talented David Jesse, who talks to us a little bit about how Tatooine Sons got started, some of the crazy things that they've gotten into since they started that podcast, some of the incredible guests that they've had, as well as getting to name a porg.
Yeah, and then just a bunch of Star Wars talk on top of it. So if you're a fan of Star Wars, stick around because
if
you're gonna hear me doing my best to keep up with you two.
Yeah, as we nerd out a little bit. And if you are a fan of the Bible, check out the Bible Nerd Show. And towards the end of the interview, we get into some of that stuff. And maybe even some bonus content if you hang around about Mrs. Tatooine Sons and what she thinks about the show.
Also, TikToks.
Maybe. We'll see.
See
we
how
haven't
it
tried
goes.
it yet, so it could be cut. Otherwise, like and subscribe.
I think it's going to be good, but we'll see. Stick around for David Jesse. Tatooine Sons, Josh
Have on our lines today, Expo, a guest that we have no business talking to. This is a guy who we both sort of have on, even though he would be remiss to accept this compliment because several times I've said this and he's been like, oh, no. We kind of have him as one of those gauges of like, this is the kind of father that I want to be when I grow up.
Yep.
Sort of guys. It is the host of
I have an
Tatooine
11-year-old.
Sons. Yeah. Yeah, Damon's gonna wait until his second kid to get it right. So this is the host, the dad of the Tatooine Sons, and you're gonna have to give me the actual name of the podcast because I always butcher it. The Bible Nerd Podcast, is that correct?
The Bible Nerd Show.
The Bible Nerd Show. The Bible Nerd Show.
It's close enough.
It's the handsome, it's the talented, it's the fabulous. It's David Jesse. What's going on, brother?
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Beautiful.
Yeah,
thanks.
I really dig the new studio.
And the set's not bad either behind me.
Yeah.
Nice curated beard.
Yeah.
Your beard game is
worked hard
looking
on
good
that.
too.
It got real long in that 3 or 4 weeks of moving. It was like, so I messed with it.
And you guys moved to Georgia, right?
No, Alabama.
Alabama.
Roll
Dang
Tide.
it. I was thinking about that earlier. It's like it's either Alabama or Georgia.
Yeah.
There's an
So we were at
it's
church
Atlanta
this week,
or
they were
Alabama.
doing the graduate Sunday. And as they were announcing, there were like 27 kids going across the stage, and they were announcing where they were going to be going to school. And there was this war that broke out in the middle of this church service over Auburn versus Alabama.
Oh,
so
wow.
when people would walk across and they would be like, we're going to the university, that person's going to the University of Alabama, half the congregation would yell, Roll Tide. And when they would announce Auburn, it would be War Eagle. But there was only like 6 people that said War Eagle. So
Go ahead. This is good. I like where you're going with this.
What were they wearing when they crossed the stage? Was it their
their
robes and
traditional high school gown and cap and gown?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they let them walk across the stage with that. I don't know.
Did their
the youth
masks
pastor said that it
match?
was because they hadn't had a chance to wear it more than once, and the parents paid for it. So,
Oh, well, there you go. Did they have masks to match their cap and gown?
so this is cool. Alabama is a mask-free state.
Hey.
welcome to the dark side.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. So it's a church, that's got it's like a 600-seat auditorium, and they've got those wings on the sides, and they actually have the wings reserved for people that are wearing masks so that they can feel comfortable.
Okay.
And then the middle is where everybody sat. Where
There
was
The middle's where
literally
everybody
nobody on the
sat.
side.
When Samuel crossed the stage, was he in his The Hut outfit?
No. Now that happened at
In
Star Wars Celebration 2017.
2017, which I definitely want to get into.
Okay, cool.
Orlando.
Yeah, so before we hop into some of these stories, especially because we want to know
There's
about
some good
Celebration
stories
2017, talk to us a little bit about, let's focus on the Tatooine Sons podcast first.
Awesome.
So talk to us about the Tatooine Sons podcast, how you got started, what you guys do, because this whole story fascinates me because it is one of these sort of like wonderful gems of daddom.
Yeah.
Like being a good dad, finding something you're both interested in. But it's your story, so why don't you tell our audience what you do?
What's the elevator pitch for Tatooine Sons?
I don't know. I have never made one short enough for it. No, in the end, it comes down to my sons and I had nothing we did together for the first 16 years of my oldest son's life. We just had nothing in common until they got into Star Wars. And I grew up a massive Star Wars fan in the original trilogy era. And I still went to, I was at the midnight premieres of the prequels. And so Star Wars was always a big deal to me. And when they got into Star Wars, that became our thing we did together. And so fast forward to 2017 celebration, Star Wars Celebration Orlando, 80,000 crazy Star Wars fans at the Orlando Convention Center. And my oldest, Sam, he goes by Samuel the Hutt on the show. He was offered the opportunity to go on another podcast, which is one of the top Star Wars podcasts, Star Wars Underworld. And he was super excited about it, wrote a professional email to them following up, and they ghosted him. And
man.
Yeah, they totally did. And so the dad in me was pretty ticked. And I said, well, we'll just do our own podcast. And so we set up a microphone on the kitchen table and recorded our first episode in December of 2017. And a lot of amazing things happened since then. And it's super fun. It's just a dad and his two sons talking about it. For most of the time, it's been all Star Wars for the entire show. And the last few months, we've ventured into DC and Marvel and a bunch of other stuff as well. So.
Yeah, I actually stole one of our bits, which we found very flattering.
Oh, we really? Okay.
No, not really.
Just kidding.
But that was like 26 floors worth of story.
Yeah, well, it's a long elevator.
Yeah. and apparently fast if we're going 26 floors.
But that actually answers one of my questions because I wanted to know. I've got, kind of the same thing. I've got an 11-year-old, and we do have stuff in common, but typically we've got two TVs going. That he's watching something, I'm watching something. We did watch WandaVision together and some of the other Marvel stuff, but I love the idea of we have had Stephen Mansfield on our show who talked about men relating to each other, that we relate indirectly, and I think this is a perfect idea. And that was going to be my question is, how do you start? And you answered it with, we had a microphone on the kitchen table. It wasn't this huge production. We didn't have a studio room and bumpers on either side of the podcast and sponsors and all. It started out with just do it.
Yeah.
Would you say that's how you started? It sounds like it.
Yeah, I mean, we did a failed YouTube show, which was way too complicated.
We do too.
We still do a failed YouTube show.
You guys still have a failed YouTube show.
We do.
No. So just kidding. So so we tried that. That didn't work, and I decided that we needed to do something that was going to be simple and repeatable. And so literally it was a Blue Yeti microphone sitting on our kitchen table. Little did we know that a couple months later, things would kind of get out of control with the show and we would have to start amping things up a little bit. But by then it was so much fun. We were having a blast with it. It was great. Yeah.
Yeah. So from the genesis of the coffee table with a Blue Yeti mic and a ghosting on an email, now you've built this up. You guys have over 19,000 followers, close to 20,000 followers on Facebook alone. You've been asked by Facebook to produce some content exclusively for them. Your downloads are way more than just about anybody else that we've seen that's consistently doing pop culture stuff outside of like the people that Apple's hired and like E and some of those that are trying to get that. What's been the growth trajectory of this kind of exploded. So do you feel like you're catching up, and what was it that really sparked the growth in the show?
No, we feel like imposters with a big audience, and we'll probably always feel that way.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way it was with any content creator.
Yeah.
You're going to always feel that way with it. And, and then last week when we forget to flip the switch on the recording software and we record on a MacBook, built-in microphone instead of a fancy studio like we've built up now, those types of things help reinforce that idea. The trajectory happened about 2 months after we started the show. We built a really loyal group of about 100 people on Twitter really fast with the show, which is awesome. That's a great following when you're just, a couple months into it. But they loved the idea of a dad and his two sons. And it didn't hurt that my youngest son hadn't gone through his voice change yet. So BB Nathan was opening the show and he was talking like this all the time and that kind of stuff. And so people were, pretty intrigued by the idea of the show, a dad and his two sons talking about Star Wars. And we were living in California. So we were about an hour and a half south of LA, of Hollywood, and Collider.com, which does Collider Video and Collider Podcasts and all this. They were doing a joint deal with IMAX headquarters to do a screening of The Last Jedi, followed up with a Q&A with Rian Johnson, the writer and director.
One of the greatest Star Wars movies ever made.
Terrible movie.
It's fantastic. And as you can see, we have our autographed The Last Jedi poster by Rian Johnson on the wall behind us because it's I dare I say it may be the greatest Star Wars movie ever made. Okay.
I can also sign a piece of toilet paper for you if you want.
So we were super fans of this movie from the beginning. And I always have to say that because people think we're fans of it because of what happened. And we had seen the film 9 times in the theaters before this moment.
9 times.
Yeah, we love it.
It's a line from Ferris Bueller. I stole
9. Yeah,
9.
So we were invited. So so Collider does a deal where you have to fill out an application. They had about 2,000 applications of people to come to this, and they were only giving away 50 seats with a +1 to this screening. And our group of 100 super fans on Twitter, which is another great thing for people that are podcasters. You don't need a huge audience. You need a really passionate audience.
A rabid audience.
Yeah, 50 to 100 people that are super excited about your show can make things happen for you. And so they literally tweeted Collider and IMAX multiple times a day, every day during the application review process until they finally, I think, just backed down and were like, let them come to this show. So we ended up getting my oldest in as well. So it was the 3 of us in the middle of this, the Q&A. My youngest, Nathan, asks Ryan what the name of the porg on the Millennium Falcon is, the main little penguin-like creature, if you've seen The Last Jedi, that's in the Millennium Falcon.
They look delicious.
First, thank you for an amazing movie.
Oh, thanks, man.
And
I appreciate it.
an experience that we've had 9 times as a family.
No kidding.
So
high fives.
Thanks.
Thanks.
It inspired us to put together our own little podcast that we do every week, where we get to sit around and geek out about Star Wars.
That's
so thank you.
cool, man. That's so cool. I love that.
Last night we were eating dinner at a Chinese restaurant, and I opened my fortune cookie, and this is what it said: a lingering question will be answered happily tomorrow.
You see this? You see this smile on my face?
All right.
I'm ready to happily
so there's a question,
answer.
and it came up again during this movie, and so I'm sure that everybody in the room wants to know: did Chewie eat the pork?
Big smile. Absolutely not. Are you kidding me? No, he couldn't.
Lost
that was
bet.
the whole
All
thing.
right.
He couldn't. He didn't eat it. He only killed and roasted it.
That seems so wasted to me. All right, it looks yummy.
What is the name of the porg on the Millennium Falcon?
There's a few, though, on the Millennium Falcon.
No, the main one. I know the one you're talking about.
The nest?
What do you think his name is? It's a big moment. What do you think?
Maybe Turbis?
Turbis? Pablo, if you're listening to this live stream, that porg's name is now Turbis. It's a good Star Wars name.
Now I opened the Q&A.
Right.
Oh, you did?
I opened.
What was
the first question.
What was your question?
That was asked. My question was, did Chewie eat the porg?
Oh, okay.
With that, so
it was like probably.
And Ryan says no.
No, he says he felt too bad. He cooked it and then he wasted that pork.
He literally says he cooked it and roasted it and then didn't eat it.
Is that worse?
That's what I said.
I think so.
I immediately said that to Ryan. That's kind of terrible. But anyway,
what
towards
kind
the
of
end of
side
Q&A,
dishes go with porg?
It tastes like chicken.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm getting death
BB
looks
Nate,
from
my
the Reverend.
youngest, is sitting there, and this is my, you talk about great dads.
Mm-hmm.
This is my great dad moment. He's sitting next to me, and I look over, and he's got tears coming down his cheek. He's a super introvert, scared to death about these kinds of settings, and now he's got the writer and director of, arguably
Star Wars,
the most famous person he's ever seen in his life, sitting 6 feet in front of him, and he's crying. And I look over, and being the empathetic dad that I am, I'm like, "What are you crying about?" And he's like,
there's no crying in
Star
Wars.
I'm like, this is ridiculous. I cannot believe. I'm like whispering this into his ear, right? I'm like, I can't believe that you're crying at the screening of The Last Jedi. Ryan Johnson sitting right there. What are you crying about? And he's like, I want to ask a question. I'm like, so ask your question.
Yeah.
So finally, I calmed down a little bit. I'm like, you got 2 choices. You could not ask your question and regret it, or you could suck it up and ask the question, but you're not allowed to cry anymore.
And you can go down in Star Wars Hall of Fame.
Well,
was
I
option
didn't think
2.
you could ask the question, honestly. So about 10 minutes later, the host says, you got 5 more minutes. Anybody that has a question better ask it now. And I look over at Nate, and his eyes are just on fire, and he throws his hand up, and Ryan points directly at him and says, ask your question. And so he says, what's the name of the porg on the Millennium Falcon? And Ryan says, I don't know. What do you want? What do you think his name is? And Sam and Nate the night before had processed this entire thing. They knew that this would be the question that Nathan would ask if he got a chance.
Right.
And they thought, well, what happens if we get a chance to name him? They had totally thought it all through. So he named him after our dog. Our dog is named Buster. So he flipped the syllables in a classic Star Wars fashion
Nice.
to Turbus. And spoke right up and said, how about Turbus? And the rest is history. About 1.5 years later, they put him in the comic books. They're over here on the wall behind me. And our show was suddenly on the radar in Star Wars. We had about 250,000 people watching that live when it happened on YouTube.
Wow.
And suddenly everybody was talking about our show. So it was, we had to get good fast. And
So how did that feel in that moment when your son overcame his anxiety and then Ryan Johnson points to him?
Absolute terror when Ryan Johnson pointed to him, because you guys need to. I mean, seriously, BB Nate, he doesn't come across like this now because he spent 3.5 years doing what we're doing right now, and learning how to communicate and having interviews with people and talking to some celebrities and stuff. But at the time, he was a turtle. I mean, he would pull back fast in these moments, and I thought for sure he was going to freeze up in that and maybe even start crying, honestly. And he didn't. When he said his question and then answered it, I had no idea that they had thought through the answer.
Yeah.
So when Ryan's like, what do you think his name is? I'm like, oh no, here we go. And he's like, it's like right thing is like, how about Turbis?
Yeah.
I just,
he nailed it.
Like, where the heck did this thing come from? And then it was awesome because afterwards Ryan like pulled us aside and talked with us for like 10 minutes and took a photo and gave us an endorsement that opens up our show. And
that's cool.
And all of that. So it was pretty awesome.
I was going to say that for anyone listening, go check out their podcast. You hear the audio pretty quickly within it's in your opening intro.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get to hear the whole story, the pitch of the name for the porg, and Ryan Johnson saying that's it, and I don't know, was it Francisco or Fernando or something? He was talking to somebody.
Pablo Hidalgo.
Yeah. He was saying off screen, that's the name. Go run with it. It's very cool.
That's awesome. But that wasn't the only thing that happened at that particular celebration, because this is also where you guys got your nicknames. Is that correct?
Okay, well that was at IMAX headquarters in January of 2018. So the spring before 2017, April, we were in Orlando at Star Wars Celebration, which if you're not familiar with Star Wars Celebration, it's like San Diego Comic-Con, but only Star Wars. There's about 70 to 80,000 people that go to it. And
it's a bucket list thing for me. I really want to go to Celebration. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so much fun.
Especially if you can meet Warwick Davis and who was Daniels?
Anthony Daniels
was there.
C-3PO. Yeah. So the story quick on that is, it was costume day for us. So I'm in my Jedi costume, and
nice.
And Sam was in, those inflatable dinosaur costume, things that you see.
There's sumo wrestlers. There's the T-Rex one. Yeah, they all inflate.
Exactly. Well, my Sam had Jabba the Hutt that he was wearing.
Nice.
And Nathan had a BB-8 costume that he was wearing. And so we go to the theater where they're doing the show, and we're trying to find a seat because they're in these giant inflatable things, and we're in the balcony, and literally the pre-show guys, hype guy that comes out to about 20 minutes before the actual event starts, he's like interviewing people in the audience and stuff, and BB and Nathan, at the time we didn't call him BB Nate, he was walking back and forth across the balcony trying to find a place he could sit. So there's this hysterical visual BB-8 going back and forth, and you saw all of a sudden you hear on the microphone like, "Hey, BB-8, what are you doing up there?" and stuff. And he calls him down, and I have to help him get down from the balcony into the stage.
Right.
And he has
this is a great time to go, "I'm his father. I have to come."
Yeah. I'm in my Jedi
and also,
costume.
I can't leave my other son.
Well, this is how it works. So we're standing there at the front, and he's like, "Here, BB-8, you get to sit on stage," because they're getting ready to do Anthony Daniels' stand-up bit that he does every year. He does a show at Celebration, and so he sits him down on the stage, and he's like, "Dad, you can go sit down on the front, or go get your wife or whatever." And then I'm like, "I'm going to go sit in the back with Jabba the Hutt there," because my oldest is standing in the back in his Jabba the Hutt costume, and he says, so I say, I'm going to go sit in the back with Jabba the Hutt. He's like, "That better not be your wife." And he sees him, and so he calls him up on stage and ends up putting all three of us on stage, and then bringing up some others with it. And so Warwick Davis was hosting the panel. Anthony Daniels was there. We still get people that are like that ask us about it for when they get to know it was us that were on there. We have a lot of fun with it. So
it was
awesome.
great to watch from my perspective too, because like you're saying, you've got Anthony Daniels and Warwick Davis on stage doing their thing, and then there's some other people in the peanut gallery sitting there.
Yeah.
Two of which are wearing huge inflatable,
just enormous costumes.
and super hot under those lights.
I believe in
those costumes, and can't see anything. Warwick is standing there talking to him. They have no idea who's standing there.
That might have worked to Nate's advantage though, if he was still that timid at that time.
My favorite part of that was Warwick talking to Samuel the Hutt. I was trying to think of the phrase. Talking to Sam about, do you know that scene that's cut from A New Hope, the special edition, where he steps on his tail and he plays that out? Like, what an unbelievable moment.
Yep.
Yeah, and we honestly, if that was the pinnacle of our Star Wars fan experience, that would have been like amazing. We never dreamed anything else would happen, and that was just kind of the start. It's been pretty wild ride.
Okay, so Rian Johnson, Anthony Daniels, Warwick Davis. What else you got?
We interviewed Stephen Stanton for our 50th episode, which for us, that's a really big deal. Stephen Stanton is a voiceover artist. He's currently playing Tarkin in The Bad Batch.
Nice.
With that. He did a lot of different voices in the Clone Wars, but our favorite Star Wars series, an animated series specifically, is Star Wars Rebels. And
Rebels was great. It was really fantastic.
There was a period of time where I was living in California before my family was able to move out because of work stuff and school stuff with them, where we would watch Star Wars Rebels season 3 is the season we were on. We would watch it on Saturdays separately, them in Colorado, me in California, and then get on the phone and just geek out about it for 30, 45 minutes. And then my birthday weekend, I flew to Colorado to spend that with them, and we saw Twin Sons, which is the episode where Ben Kenobi battles Maul in that series. Yep. And Stephen Stanton does the voice of Ben Kenobi.
Really?
Episode. Yeah, and
nice.
and that became our favorite episode for a lot of different reasons. It's such an amazing episode, but we got to watch that one together, and it was just, and to see Maul again and die and the all of them.
I was gonna say, so for people that aren't familiar with Rebels, because I know so many people watched the 9 movies, But the real, for me, as an adult now, like the real heart of Star Wars is in the Clone Wars and in Rebels. Like those are my favorite pieces of Star Wars. So my wife and I watched Rebels.
Definitely not the prequels and definitely not Last Jedi.
Certainly the Last Jedi.
The films are absolutely, the Last Jedi is a masterpiece.
Yeah, no doubt.
I'm just going to keep very subtly throwing some bows in here.
No, that's fine. Your elbows don't affect us.
Not everybody can be right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'll use the Nancy Pierce. Do you like things that are right? Well, we should come to but getting back to like what that episode was. So my wife and I were watching that episode. I'd seen the whole series before. And she got really tense when Kenobi and Maul fight each other. This is the actual death of Darth Maul. And after it happens, and it's a really fast scene.
This is not the one where he gets cut in half and just brushes it off.
No, this isn't that. And you should watch Clone Wars because there's so much more to it than that. But you're right. As a casual fan,
he got cut in half, and he's already dead.
And now he's got spider legs.
He comes back.
But the way that all of that ended, that is probably one of the most incredible pieces of just Star Wars mastery that there ever has been, is that scene. And I remember watching her watch it because I knew what was coming up, and I'm watching her, and she sees Maul die, and she just totally is like, like what? She's like, I didn't know. Oh, just total relief, because you think the whole time they set it up like Kenobi could die, even though in the back of your mind you know
he is not going to.
Yeah, you know he's not going to. But just the writing, the animation, the tension, the music, it's magnificent. So that's so cool. The voice work is stellar.
Yeah. Stephen Stanton and Sam Witwer, who does Maul and he's actually in Supergirl. I don't know if most people don't connect the Star Wars world to that, but he's actually an actor in that. Yeah. So if you go back to when that episode was getting ready to air, the hype was unbelievable going into that episode, because you got the teaser on Wednesday that Ben Kenobi was going to be there, and that we knew Maul was a part of the storyline by this point. So we had this anticipation that this mega battle was going to take place between Maul and Ben, and it was just going to be like, flipping everywhere and crazy stuff. And so you're watching, and the episode itself is it takes its time. It breathes. It doesn't move super fast. And you're like, wait, we're like 20 minutes into this thing, and we haven't even started a battle yet that everybody was anticipating would be, a 10-minute battle going forward. And the nuance of what Obi-Wan does, or what Ben Kenobi does in this, he starts his pose in the exact same position that Qui-Gon does right before Qui-Gon is killed by Maul in The Phantom Menace. And then he shifts his position to sort of a traditional Obi-Wan position, and he baits him into going into this battle with it. And Maul attacks him the exact same way that he attacked Qui-Gon. And Kenobi has advanced. And he did 3 strikes and he's gone. And then he cradles. I geek out about this episode. He cradles Maul in his arms in the same way that Obi-Wan Kenobi cradled Qui-Gon Jinn in The Phantom Menace. And there's this really powerful moment. And everybody, when that episode ended, you just see this. The fandom didn't know what to do with this scene, because they wanted this big battle, and they got classic kind of samurai type stuff, the old samurai movies type stuff. So we had Stephen Stanton on our show, which was our first celebrity that we ever interviewed with it.
So what did Stanton think about all that? What was Stanton's take on everything that transpired in the last few minutes of that episode?
He really breaks it down in our show. He really breaks down all of the moves, and what his thought process is going into that episode was Maul is still the same Maul as all the way back at the Phantom Menace. He is not changed at all. He's not grown. He's not matured. He's not progressed. He's still full of all that hatred, and he's the same person, same being. While Ben Kenobi has grown. If you go back here, Clone Wars, if there's the relationship between Maul and Kenobi in Clone Wars is complicated. To say the least. And there's a lot of revenge moments in the Clone Wars where, obviously Maul kills Qui-Gon Jinn, his master. He ends up killing Duchess Satine, which is another really close character in Obi-Wan Kenobi's life. And yet he doesn't seek revenge in this moment. He doesn't want to battle Maul. He wants to walk away from this battle. And he grows. And instead of this being some massive thing, it's just, let's get this over with. There's never a doubt in Ben Kenobi's mind that he's going to defeat Maul, and it's going to be quick and short and easy. And he just does it. And then he holds him in his arms and helps him die with this forgiveness and mercy and grace. And so all of that was stuff that Steven talked about on the show. It was fantastic. Yeah.
That does sound
that's
very,
really
very
awesome.
powerful ending to the Maul saga.
Yeah, it's wild.
Huh.
And like I said, I remember watching it with Kay, and she's like, did you know that was going to happen? I was like, yeah, I watched that, live whenever it came out. I'd seen it a couple of times since then.
Here's a Kleenex.
But exactly. But there was so much power in that moment, and that's probably why that show, I think, sticks out head and shoulders above everything else that they've done. Obviously, the Clone Wars was great, and its run of especially seasons 4 and 5 really hit their stride. Season 6 was kind of cool, but it was a Netflix only thing, and they just picked up on a bunch of old storylines to try to bring some closure to stuff. But Rebels as a standalone, especially, I think seasons 3 and 4, it ended so strong. Then we got to see some of the other characters, one of which is somebody that is rumored to be making several appearances in the next few series, and that is Grand Admiral Thrawn. So I've got some big questions for you, specifically concerning Thrawn. Now, we've had some correspondence with Timothy Zahn. We might get to have him on maybe at the end of this year, because he finished up Thrawn Ascendancy, Greater Good, which is the second book. The third one's coming out in November, so he is on this huge writing tear. But when Thrawn got mentioned in...
Hold on.
Yeah.
I roughly know who Thrawn is. A bunch of people do. For those who are listening that don't know, who is Thrawn?
So Thrawn...
Why is he worth talking about?
Yeah, so Thrawn is Grand Admiral in the Imperial Navy, I guess is the best way to put it, since they're starships. And outside of the Moff infrastructure, the most powerful person in the Empire. And
he's
is
not
the person
Force sensitive.
No, he's a Chiss, so he's blue, he's got red eyeballs, all black hair, he's a humanoid type figure, but master tactician. And
what color are his butt cheeks?
Probably also blue.
Red?
He's not a baboon. So when the Empire falls, in the Legends, Thrawn is the one who takes over. Now, we're really not sure what happens in the new canon, because it's a little mysterious. But in The Mandalorian, Ahsoka mentions going after Thrawn. We see Thrawn in Rebels. So when we were talking about trying to get an interview with Timothy Zahn initially, it was during The Mandalorian.
That's probably over with the butt cheek joke now.
Well, then the thing with probably so, or that might be part of his controlled rowdiness.
Yeah.
So when the news about Thrawn hits that he was mentioned in The Mandalorian, we got a message back that day, and he was like, "Guys, I'm being flooded with stuff. I'm not going to be able to do this." He didn't know that they were going to put Thrawn's name in there at all. So this is a huge pivot. What do you think Disney's going to do with Thrawn moving forward, now that we've got so much information about his backstory and no idea where he's at as far as like what he's actually doing during this part of the timeline?
Right. Well, I think to answer that question, you have to go back to the finale of Star Wars Rebels, because that's the last moment you see Thrawn in our timeline with this. And so he's in classic Dave Filoni. Dave Filoni is the executive producer of Star Wars Rebels, The Bad Batch. He's the executive producer with Jon Favreau of The Mandalorian. He's mentored by George Lucas. In classic Dave Filoni fashion, he took a bunch of things from the rest of the series and threw them in at the end that everybody thought had no bearing on the story. And one of them was Purgles, which are space whales. So no, this is not Star Trek, The Voyage Home. This is a completely different franchise. But these space whales come in as Zap, the main character in Rebels, Ezra, along with Grand Admiral Thrawn, into the unknown regions of space. And that's the last time we see them. Then you see this epilogue at the end of that show, where Ahsoka Tano, which I'm sure we'll end up talking about at some point as well.
Sure.
Ahsoka Tano comes back to find one of the other characters and basically go after finding Ezra and Thrawn with this. So that's the way Star Wars Rebels ended. Then we have the episode in last season of The Mandalorian where Ahsoka comes and she ends it by asking the question about Thrawn. And the big question there is, did that episode of The Mandalorian actually happen before or after the epilogue of Star Wars Rebels? And Dave Filoni said that in classic Star Wars fashion, you don't have to do things in order. So he alluded to the fact that this could be that scene in The Mandalorian actually happened before the epilogue. Ooh. So what we have now is Grand Admiral Thrawn is out there. She knows where he's at or how to find him. And so the epilogue shows that she's going with Sabine Wren, the other character, to go track him down. And that's the rumor right now as to what the Ahsoka series is going to be Thrawn.
Yeah, we're
going to have Ahsoka and Sabine hunting down, going to find Ezra Bridger to rescue Ezra, but he's with Thrawn, and it's almost nothing has been officially confirmed, of course, but the sources that have been reliable over the last several years about rumors and leaks seem to be all in agreement that that's what that series is going to be about.
Which I think would be phenomenal to have the female Mandalorian that everybody wants to see with, Sabine Wren working with Ahsoka in order to do this. But there's also this weird thing with Ezra. Ezra several times has flirted with the dark side. Now that Kanan's gone, like what are the potential spins here where that you've got a Grand Admiral who now has somebody that's force sensitive. Thrawn is a mastermind of the mental game. Like, could he flip Ezra? And that's been one of the things that I've seen on several of the just sort of Star Wars conspiracy sites, or people are like, nope, they're going to get there and Ahsoka's going to have to kill Ezra because Thrawn's flipped him.
I just cannot handle that idea. I'm like, right now I'm gonna just take my mind. No.
No.
I have not heard that because I stay away from a lot of the rumor sites with that. That I just couldn't do it. And I'm telling you right now, BB Nate, my youngest, would die. He couldn't handle it. He's been dying to watch this follow up to Rebels. Where's Ezra? Where's Thrawn? And he loves those characters, that character specifically of Ezra. And we wondered if he was going to go dark side when he was interacting with Maul so much in Star Wars Rebels.
Right.
I think that the saving grace of what could happen is who Thrawn really is.
Yeah.
Thrawn really, truly, especially this version of Thrawn, the canon version in the new Disney era, is not loyal to the Emperor and loyal to the Empire as much as he is loyal to himself and loyal to the Chiss.
Yep.
And so he's always played both sides in this version.
Good
and
man.
So I don't see him
smart.
Necessarily so concerned with dark side and things like that. He's worried about how can he save the Chiss. So if the Empire is labeled, if he needs to be a part of the Empire to strengthen the Empire in order for the Empire to come to the rescue of the Chiss, then that's fine. But I don't see him as trying to turn Ezra based on that character. Legends Thrawn, I would have a much more concern with that. And that's something to kind of talk about too, because the reason Thrawn is such a big deal, Danley, is because there was that period of time after the original trilogy ended when we never thought we'd get Star Wars again. Yep. The prequels we weren't sure the prequels would ever happen. And so Heir to the Empire, which is the first of the Thrawn trilogy books by Timothy Zahn, was all Star Wars that people got.
Mm-hmm.
They got the books and those types of things.
It was the bridge gap between
and it was
potentially nothing.
Right. And it was a New York Times bestseller. Like Heir to the Empire.
It was immediately
it was
a
insane.
bestseller.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the Thrawn trilogy was everyone's canon Star Wars with it. It introduced Thrawn. It introduced characters like Mara Jade and some of these other characters. And so that kind of goes back to what the big fervor was when at Star Wars Celebration 2017, in Orlando, they announced, or no, it was 2016, the year before in Anaheim. They announced that Thrawn was going to be coming to Rebels. It broke the internet as far as Star Wars is concerned, because that character that everyone loved so much from Legends was now becoming real again. After Disney had basically pushed it aside and acted like he didn't exist, and so that was the exciting part there.
Yeah, and you've got a very complicated relationship with another one of the characters that a lot of people love that Disney may or may not be putting into the Bad Batch, and that is Ahsoka Tano. Where do you see her story arc going, and are you still hopeful that they don't bring her into the Bad Batch at all?
I beg anybody from Disney and Star Wars and the Lucasfilm Story Group, Pablo Hidalgo, Matt Martin, Leland Chee, all of those guys, please don't bring Ahsoka into the Bad Batch. Let the Bad Batch series be the Bad Batch series, because then it just becomes it could become too much of a crutch for this series. I don't think the Bad Batch characters are strong enough, at least right now, to be able to sustain the show. If you bring in an Ahsoka Tano, it'll just become Ahsoka Tano's show all over again, and I don't think that they can do that.
You want to let the characters develop over the series and have new characters rather than just bring in somebody and they drift to the outer rim.
Yes. I think that's the proper way to put that.
Yeah.
That's it.
So transitioning to we talked about how we both admire your fatherly instincts with starting a podcast to relate with your sons, teach them, but also just be with them and be around with what's going on in their lives. I am curious with the Gina Carano incident.
Oh yeah, this is good.
I listened to y'all's podcast. There was a couple of episodes when it happened, and you had specifically said, you had called out, and I'm not going to quote it because I don't remember exactly, but you had said, hey guys, we want to talk about Star Wars. There was a big development, but I want you both to wait before we dive into it. And I admire that. I think it's very wise, but I really want to get your insight into why you did that.
Yeah, obviously with the Gina Carano story, it's so loaded with emotion, and we're not naive to the reality that culture is not even drifting; it's in a full sprint away from biblical values, and so knowing that, we knew these types of moments would end up happening. It was hard for us with Gina because of a couple of reasons. One, The Mandalorian is such a fantastic show, and Cara Dune is a fantastic character, and so the impact on the story was huge. So as Star Wars fans, that was an emotional thing. Add to the fact that we have Jewish lineage, and I've spent a lot of my the other side of my world, my ministry work, working with the Jewish people, and her comments were sort of centered in on so much to do with that, the Holocaust comment with that, and the way people were reacting to it. So in the initial episode that we recorded just a few days after it was announced that Gina Carano was not returning to season 3 of The Mandalorian, which is an important distinction that I think that so many people have missed in this. She wasn't fired. Her contract wasn't renewed. And if we can learn anything from Disney, those types of things don't always stay permanent with that. So there's a possibility she could return.
Who was the other one? It was James Gunn.
Yep.
I thought there was another one.
But James Gunn's back.
One.
Yeah. I mean, full on back. Yeah. And so we recorded the episode and made the decision that we weren't going to talk about the Gina Carano episode or controversy on that episode, and to give us more time to process. I wanted time to talk with the boys about it away from the show. and to really think about what she said and analyze some things. Usually there's a proverb, in the Bible that says the first to state their case seems right.
Yeah.
But there's always two sides to a story. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to be able to really think through what she said, think through what happened with Disney, let them make some statements, and then address it. And when we addressed it in the next episode, that was a hard episode for us because we don't talk about political things and social things on this podcast. That's not on Tatooine Sons. We just stay away from all of that. But we had to address it because it was directly impacting Star Wars. And so what we needed to do was just analyze what she said, analyze the fan reaction, analyze what that meant for Star Wars, and then put it to bed. And then
I raised it back up.
Yeah, no, thanks. No,
you necromanced it.
Some really positive reaction from people I didn't expect positive reaction from. We had some really negative reaction from people I expected negative reaction from.
That's surprising.
And in the end, some people really called me out personally, because they didn't feel like I basically said, we opened the episode by saying, what Gina Carano said, or excuse me, if what the media is reporting Gina Carano said is true, then that's pretty scary stuff if she really believed that. Mm-hmm. And if that was really happening. And so that's the way we addressed it to start. And some people felt like I didn't effectively debunk that there isn't a Holocaust coming to conservatives around the world right now. And I didn't flat out say there is no Holocaust. They're not rounding up Christians and putting them into concentration camps, and that was what people harped on. But in the end, I felt like we did what we needed to do on that, and we're able to sort of put it behind us until today. Thanks, man. No, I'm
yeah, exactly.
Well, I was very. I'll just go with pleased. I was very impressed with how you handled it. That I think that obviously is very politically charged, is very emotional. There were very split sides of she should not have been fired and she should be canceled, for some of the things that she said. And I really appreciated the approach that you took, coaching your sons through, hey, this is a potential to get us a lot of backlash. So let's be wise about it in the way that we approach it, and understand that anything we say can be taken out of context. And let's, like you had said, letting the chips fall a little bit, or let's see the way it plays out. Let's not judge. Let's not rush out with our opinions and put it out there. So I thought that was a really great, again, another great fathering moment. Yeah. To coach your sons through that. So, good job. That's all I got.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, I think that one of the things that we've lost in our parenting right now, as so many parents I see, is taking time to teach critical thinking to our children. Our responsibility isn't to teach them when they get to 13 and 14, 15 years old. We need to stop telling them what to think. We need to start teaching them to think, and teaching them to uncover what they believe, and be okay with them disagreeing, and okay with them questioning, but not just for questioning's sake. We need them to learn how to process information and really analyze it. And let's be honest here, guys, and you guys, I know you guys agree with me on this. It's not a progressive liberal problem. The conservative movement as well, and the Christian evangelical movement, really lacks critical thinking skills right now, and it creates more problems than it helps. And so, if all I do with my kids, and if all we do as parents is teach them how to truly analyze information and process it and think it through, and make reasoned decisions based on true facts, then I think that if we've trained them correctly, then they aren't going to stray far from it in the end.
Yeah, I think that that's an important distinction to make, is that it's not just one group of people that it has lost the ability to think critically about things or to even see the other side of an argument. It's across the board that everybody's doing the same thing, is that we're holing up in our little camps and we're just lobbing grenades at one another instead of, we've talked about this with Chris Respis from Maniac Christian Fellowship, who's a church here in our community, is that we have lost the ability to sit down at a table with somebody who disagrees with us and to extend grace and benefit of the doubt. That, we assume that because somebody disagrees with us, that means that they're an idiot, instead of thinking like, this person probably believes this or thinks a certain way because they have their own set of convictions, agree with them or not, that has led them to this conclusion. And if they haven't, well, there's something to be said about interrogating that gently and lovingly in a way where you force them to begin to think about the things that they say, think, and believe.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that I personally really appreciated about that episode in particular, is because that's what you made your sons do. You made them think about it from like, what did she say or what did she allegedly say? And then how can that be perceived? How does it make them feel? What do they think about that statement in light of everything else that's going on? But then to follow it up with, now look at it from a business perspective. Like Disney as an entity has to respond to this, not just whether or not they agree with what she said, but now they have to respond to it because it's something that impacts their bottom line. And to quote Deion Sanders, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. So like, let's figure that.
What else has Deion Sanders said?
Not a lot. He ruined a lot of kids' lives. That's a whole nother story. So there's so many things though that we don't take into consideration when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I really appreciate the thoughtfulness in your approach to it, and also the way that you allowed your sons the opportunity to not, as a responsible parent, not flesh this stuff out on air. Let's talk about it. Let's, kind of craft what it is that we really think about it. Let's do some research and then let's
talk
have
about it and put it to bed.
Yeah. Then let's have an intelligent conversation about it and then move from there. Speaking of intelligent conversations, I want to segue into the Bible Nerd Show, which is one that I am subscribed to. I absolutely love, because you do take a very thoughtful and pragmatic approach to Scripture. You're not coming at it from any sort of, the way I think about it as a pastor is you're not coming at it from a theological angle in this sense. Everything that has to do with Scripture is theological in one way or another. You are not proof texting the Scriptures that you pick in order to prove a more broad theological point of view. Instead, you're taking the Scripture, you're walking through it in order to just do a great 10 to 20 minute exegesis of what it is that you're looking at. How did the Bible Nerd Show get started? And what's kind of the impetus behind that for you?
So I came from a very narrow theological perspective growing up. I grew up in an environment, a Christian environment there was really one way to think about everything within the Bible, and everybody else was wrong. There's that saying, I can't remember who said it. I think it's been quoted by or attributed to like 15 different people, but in the essentials, unity, and in the more questionable things, it's about grace and mercy and that type of thing. I didn't come from that background. It was like, all right, here's the way you think, and if you don't agree with me, you're probably not even saved, and you're worse than a heretic.
Hellfire.
Yeah, I think it's a
Hellfire.
It's an Augustine, or it's attributed to Saint Augustine, I think is the best way to put it. It's or the best way to say that, right?
What is he the patron saint of?
Of unity, and essentials unity, and non-essentials liberty, and in all things charity, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that wasn't my background. My background was in all things, beat them over the head with the King James Version Bible. And,
oh, cool.
And they'll get it eventually.
Thou shalt bleed.
Exactly. And part of that, I went to a Bible college that preached that and taught that, and I started to rebel against that to some extent. And then over about 10, 15 years, just softened my positions on that. And then in 2008, I went to Israel. Didn't want to go to Israel. My mom wanted to go to Israel. She wouldn't go by herself, so I went with her, and my world got wrecked in that experience. Not because of any, any specific, experience, other than I sensed that my understanding of the Bible was skewed based on a Gentile Western perspective that may not always give the accurate interpretation of the events and what was being said. So all that to be said, I came back from Israel and began to reread the Bible and rebuild my theology. And lots of mistakes. That was 2008. Lots of weird rabbit trails and things that I got, that I thought I understood that were completely messed up. And the beautiful thing that happened is God's grace. God isn't really too concerned about a true seeker that is seeking him getting off a little bit, because if they continue to seek, they're going to find truth. And I've come back to a very orthodox theology that I present in a very unorthodox way. I try to communicate scripture. The way I describe it on the show is in its historic, geographic, religious, and cultural context, so that we can see Jesus more clearly, love him more dearly, and follow him more nearly day by day. And so,
DC talk.
What's that?
It's a good DC
talk. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
so the way I describe it is, if you've looked through the wrong end of a pair of binoculars at something, what you're looking at doesn't change. If I was in this room right now and I turned to the fat end of a pair of binoculars and I was looking at the pictures on the other side of the room, the pictures are still the same pictures. Those aren't any different. But what I see is very different, because I'm not able to see it clearly. Mm-hmm. It's at a distance, and I'm just able to get bits and pieces of it. But if I turn that lens around and look at it the way that it built to be looked at through those binoculars, not only do I see it more naturally, but I actually see it magnified, and I'm able to see things that I would never have been able to see otherwise. And so that's what I believe looking at scripture in its context helps us do. And so that's what we do on the Bible Nerds Show.
And how about the Holy Spirit is the little wheel up top that gives you the focus?
I like it.
Huh?
Which way of the binoculars are you looking at?
Does that make me a reverend?
No,
you're still the reprobate.
Yeah.
And I think it is interesting. I was going to bring this up. Isn't it interesting how the reverend is the one that understands and appreciates the absolute majesty of The Last Jedi, and the reprobate is the one that can't seem to understand what that movie's all about. So.
It makes a lot of sense.
Trying to think of a witty comeback.
It makes a lot of sense.
Maybe you're shut up.
Solid. Well, hey, man, we really appreciate the time that we've had with you this evening. We want to make sure that we're respectful of your time, as we are with all of our guests. And so we are going to close out this interview with a little bit of controlled rowdiness. So what's going to happen, since David's never listened to our podcast before, we're gonna,
I know, it's a shock.
As no one should. That's what we're going to follow. We'll ask you some rapid fire questions. Just respond with the first thing that comes to your mind. As we get this segment rolling, Danley, we'll start with you.
Hold on, let's see. Josh, did you get that? Oh, okay, we're ready to go.
Okay, we are ready. Go ahead.
If you had a time machine, what atrocity would you go back in time to stop?
The Holocaust.
Okay, I'll let that one go.
you had something quick you were going to respond
I had a correct answer, The Last Jedi, but that's a better answer.
Yeah. You think
I was going to make a joke about it, and I was like, now I can't, because then I'm going to get canceled.
Because you'll get canceled along with Gina Carano.
Yeah, properly diffused. Greatest Star Wars lightsaber battle.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to go for sheer beauty, I am going to go back with the Ben Kenobi Maul from Twin Sons.
Okay. All right.
I was actually going to say the same thing. As much as I don't like the Phantom Menace, it's probably my favorite lightsaber battle between the two. Now, the Twin Sons.
He's talking specifically about the episode with the Rebels.
Right. I was going to say, I know that that's different, but from what I've seen, I would actually say the Phantom Menace, which is it kind of horrifies me.
It's a fantastic battle.
It is.
But that's a great scene.
The battle with Rey and Kylo against the Praetorian Guard's pretty good too. That's a hard one. I think that might be my top.
Only Star Wars saga film where
that
there's no
cool.
actual lightsaber against lightsaber clash.
Yeah.
That actually, I agree with that. And truth be told, I am playing up my dislike of The Last Jedi.
Yeah,
but
don't tell the truth. That's
there's
not
a
part
lot
of your
that
character.
there's a lot I don't like, and I'd be happy to go into it, but we don't have time. So with Thrawn entering the live production, who would you cast as Thrawn?
Ooh, good question.
Lars Mikkelsen.
Oh, love it. Sorry, I probably
he's the voice of Thrawn.
I peeked it.
In
I
Rebels.
love Lars Mikkelsen.
Yeah, Lars Mikkelsen.
So you would have him do the voice and the action.
I would have him play it live action. He's
Thrawn.
already Thrawn. He already understands the character. He fits the look. He's perfect.
Do you think they're going to do that?
I do.
That would be so great.
Yeah, it's already rumored, but I feel pretty strongly about it.
This is going to sound weird, but I fell in love with him as Hannibal.
Oh,
yeah.
It was a dark show, but man,
that wasn't Lars Mikkelsen. That was Mads Mikkelsen.
Oh,
Lars is his brother. Lars plays.
I thought you said okay. I thought you said Mars.
No, Lars. Lars Mikkelsen. He plays.
That's a bummer.
Benedict Cumberbatch's Sherlock in that season 4, season 3, season 4. He plays the rival in that series, the PBS.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
The rival.
Yeah.
After Moriarty's gone, he plays the other rich dude in season 3 of Sherlock.
He's the guy with the shark eyes that he said is.
Yeah. He's got he's got that lens that he click.
Okay.
That's Lars Mikkelsen, and
he would be great. Now that I know who you're talking about, he would be awesome because he was fantastic. I love Sherlock.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Who do you think Ahsoka Tano? Now that we've got Ahsoka Tano in there, who do you think that Ahsoka Tano should team up with in the new Ahsoka series, if not Sabine Wren? What fits that character?
A Sebastian Stan, Mark Hamill, or Luke Skywalker.
Okay.
Sebastian Stan as Luke?
Yeah,
Luke Skywalker,
that would be pretty cool.
That would be pretty cool casting.
All right.
What would you serve as a side to pork?
Kawaki and monkey lizard. So.
All right, that makes sense.
And some green milk?
Oh, so, at Galaxy's Edge, I am partial to the green milk. So I like that. So yeah.
Cool.
All right. The Bible scripture do you think is the most misquoted and misused?
Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
You don't think that's going to help me with my bench press?
Nope.
Well.
I think it means almost exactly the opposite of what most people try to make it mean. So.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
All right, that wraps it up for me.
Well, hey, man, we thank you very much for being on the show, David. And
thank you guys.
Make sure that you guys check out Tatooine Sons. We'll have the links to that and the Bible Nerd Show all in the show notes, and maybe even a link to the episode with Gina Carano and where they get to talk a little bit about the Two Sons episode of Rebels, if we can dig those up.
Episode 50. So yeah,
right on. All right, thanks very much, man.
All right, thanks, guys. See you, buddy.
All right, hey, David freaking Jesse.
DFG.
Yeah, he was great.
DFJ.
I was just gonna let it go. I was gonna let it go.
Yeah.
Dude, that guy's awesome.
He is. We first came across him doing the Marvel, Friday Night Marvel thing where we started reviewing.
Yeah, with WandaVision.
WandaVision. Came across him, super cool. And I started listening to his podcast, and I loved it.
It's really good.
And I love that I mean we've had several episodes where we've talked about
all of our episodes
with Mansfield relating with other men,
right?
Building a band of brothers. I kind of applied that to with my son. Like I want to be a good father and have a relationship with my son where I can help him grow and mature,
right?
And I mean I think every father deals with those challenges of how. How do I relate to my son? He likes Preston Plays on YouTube. I hate Preston Plays. I don't. Preston, you're not watching this, but I don't. But it's not. I'm not in his target audience, right? So what's something that we can both relate on? And I think that he's set out a perfect blueprint for dads to follow. You can buy a USB mic. I think he actually mentioned, the Yeti.
Yeah, the Blue Yeti.
I don't know if it's,
he said the Blue Yeti.
USB, but I think it is.
Yeah.
Plug it in your computer. You can start recording. They did it over their kitchen, over their kitchen table, and then ended up with this show where he gets to relate with his sons every week and talk them through storylines and themes, and he's not bashing them over the head with it. Like they want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
It's so cool what he's done, and then again being able to navigate some difficult conversations that are going on in society, and he gets to do that with his sons. They're going to be, first off, they're great. We've had
Nate and Sam are both really good kids.
Yeah, and they are going to succeed in life because I think that they've had.
I hope so.
I think they will.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a weird conversation. The point I'm trying to make is I think that he's done such a great job fathering them and turning them into godly, strong young men.
Right.
And it's all from, I'm not saying it's all, but a large part of it was this thing that he's built over last four years or so.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this with Justin Batt. Whenever we were talking about Daddy Saturday and everything that he has going on, is being intentional with your kids. And sometimes that means pivoting into the things that they like instead of the things that you're interested in, right? And we discussed our dads did a lot of the same things, that our moms did it. If you look back at the mom episode, we were talking about how our moms went to clubs and Deep Ellum in downtown Dallas in order to see us play, is that figuring out what that is. And David was really honest saying, hey, you know what? The first 16 years of my son's life, which would have been Sam, the older son, there wasn't a lot that they related to. There wasn't a lot that they had in common. And when they discovered that they both loved Star Wars, then all of a sudden this door opened up for what's turned into a really great, really blossoming relationship that they get to build on some of this commonality. I admire David not just as a fellow podcaster, but also as a dad, as a man. Being able to do those things is really incredible. The way that it's brought his family together is just it's awesome, and it's a great thing to be able to get to share something with your dad. Like as a young man, it's great to be able to do that. I'm not in that position yet. Right, I don't get to share anything with my kids because we don't have kids.
Oh, they're about your dad. I was like, why not?
No.
Scott's awesome.
But I mean, I just got back from vacation with my dad. We just took a road trip where we went through the Petrified Forest, the Grand Canyon.
A lot of Star Wars related
Zion.
stops.
Absolutely. We made some incredible stops. We got a shot of the two of us that my wife took where we're in at the Mesquite Dunes, where C-3PO and R2-D2 get stranded on Tatooine. So we've got some great stuff that we did there. But then we went to Zion National Park. We went to Death Valley. We went to Tombstone together. And so we made this huge road trip, my mom, my dad, my wife, and I, and had an absolute blast. So there are those things that we get to share. But I know that, like with my nephew, right, my youngest brother, his son, who does all of the drops on our podcast that cover up cuss words. But we've gotten to do some incredible things with him because he's starting to love, Star Wars, and he loves outer space. And so they've shown him some of the Clone Wars and things like that. And he thinks that it's incredible. And he just picks up on everything. And getting to, bring over a Star Wars action figure, that's what I've been getting him for his birthdays, the really nice statues of the Star Wars characters. He loves them. He thinks it is great, even though he doesn't want to play with them because they're nice and he knows that. But just like having them on his shelves to look at, he absolutely loves it. And those kind of things, like being able to bring joy and finding that just the camaraderie between generations of men, is really cool, and it does bring about a lot of the stuff we talked about with Mansfield, with initiations and all that kind of stuff. And I think it opens up a unique opportunity for us to be able to build relationship with the next generation, but also have something where if they know that we have a common thing that we enjoy, well, then maybe that means that we're not so dumb in other areas too. And I think finding that common ground really allows us to open up into the realm of being able to share things like practical life wisdom and things like that otherwise we wouldn't have that open door to do. And I think David does a great job of it. Like I said, as a podcaster, but also as a father, and with his Bible Nerd Show stuff, he does some incredible stuff.
I'm assuming he's a good husband too.
It seems like it. It seems like it. We might need to interview Mrs. Tatooine Sons in order to get the full story there, but it does appear that way.
And we promise to not talk about Star Wars.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out another episode of the Reverend and Reprobate. Make sure that you check out David Jesse on Tatooine Sons and the Bible Nerd Show. Links to all that are going to be in the show notes. There was so much that we didn't get into with him, but he talks about it on his show. Make sure that you check out. They've got a new show that's coming out,
It's really good.
pretty regularly about the Bad Batch, which we know that we're going to get several episodes of, and see whether or not Thrawn and Ahsoka end up meeting in that show.
Maybe they fall in love.
We almost did it, man. We were so close.
Hi, this is David Jesse from Tatooine Sons, a pop culture podcast and the Bible Nerds Show. And the reason you should never listen to the Reverend and Reprobate is because Danley just can't be honest about how awesome The Last Jedi is. And he's kind of, living up to his name as being a reprobate.